It's story time on the mic. First off, I want to start by saying that Amino was a very special place to a lot of people, and it was used for a number of things from fan art, fan fiction, and even just fan calls, which is basically just a bunch of nerds talking to each other. Let's talk about how I even first found out about Amino. Before I knew about Amino, I didn't really know too much about chat role-playing. The only things that I had known about chat role-playing were from videos of YouTubers playing EVBot. I understood that anything in regular text was dialogue, and anything with between asterisks were actions. How I first found Amino was through the undertale community. And sorry for my voice, I'm a little sick right now. When I was in the undertale community back in the day, 2016 I believe, I ended up coming across a fan series called AFAT, Ask, Frisk, and Company. When I was into AFAT, one day they hosted a live stream where all the voice actors got together and talked. They talked about how they started the series, how they found each other, the auditions they hosted, and that the creator of the web series also auditioned under an alias to play Undyne, and I thought that was fucking amazing. So at the end of the live stream, they closed the live, but the chat was still active. The chat itself didn't close down. So a bunch of us stayed after the stream. I was going to leave. I mean, it was like 12 midnight. I was 15. I wasn't even supposed to be on the computer that late, but I was. And when I was in there, I was talking to everybody for a while. It was just normal conversations about Undertale and, the fan fiction, all that stuff. But then somebody did a action in their text, which led to someone else responding with another said action. And for a while, all I did was watch because I didn't really know what was going on and why they were doing this. And as I kept watching, it just developed. It turned from some zany, high five type actions to the actions leading to other people's actions being garnered as consequence because of their previous actions. In a non-nerd way, they were starting to tell a little story. What had happened was that somebody was starting to act rowdy, so they punched another person with a beer bottle, which incidentally set the scene for the roleplay, that everybody now believed that we were inside of a bar. So a lot of people started role-playing actions as if they were strangers in a bar. Lots of them just started fighting each other. There was a handful of people handing out drinks, mixing drinks with bleach. People were drinking the bleach drinks, yet they weren't dying. So, I guess that was the only unrealistic part. And I was still watching and I was still talking to people, but I didn't do any role-playing until 80% of the bar had started to go off fucking rails. After that, I was like, okay, I think I've got to do something because they're all going to kill each other. And for some reason, they can't see that they're going to kill each other. So what I did was, being from Texas at the time, I grabbed my trusty lasso, raised it up high and swung it in the air. And I started roping all the ne'er-do-wells. Every last one of them. As I did this, they all just calmed down. Not really because they wanted to, mainly because I tied them up and they weren't able to move. Some of them tried to break loose, but I just got them again, and others helped me keep them down until they were all calm and no longer struggling to cause mayhem. So, after the mayhem had settled, there was a few of us who were still in the live stream. I'd say about 6 people were in the end of the live stream, and they were talking to me. I was talking to them too. We just got back into Undertale. But then we started talking about our own YouTube channels, and that's when things changed. I was talking about how I had 100-something subscribers, and that they had 200-something subscribers, and a few of us had 100-something subscribers. One of us had, like, I think 550. And we were like, oh man, yeah, and we were like, oh, I'm not that really good at YouTube. Oh no, I suck. I can't fucking record videos. Oh my gosh, I'm so boring and lame, and no one ever wants to watch my crappy videos because I don't have anything interesting to do or say. And it was from a lot of us. And we were all different kinds of YouTubers. I was a gaming YouTuber. One was a speed painting YouTuber. Another was a gaming YouTuber. Another was a gaming YouTuber. And the last one was a vlogging YouTuber. You find a lot of people in the most random places. And after that night, 2 things happened to me that day. 1, I declared that I'd get 1,000 subscribers. Because we all said that we weren't going to stop until we got 1K. 2, I said, I need to find more people like that. And I need to do exactly what happened again tonight. Wherever I can find it. Coincidentally, after that, I didn't immediately find Amino right after that. It took about, I want to say, 4 to 6 months before Amino came in. On YouTube, I had ended up seeing an ad for Amino. I think I saw an ad for the Undertale AU Amino. It wasn't an ad, it was a YouTube video sponsoring the Undertale AU Amino. But, an ad nonetheless. And I was like, Amino. In the video, they had talked about fan art, role-playing, and all that stuff, cosplays. And I'm like, that sounds like something I'd want to see every day. Maybe I should give it a try. It might be something like YouTube. So I go ahead and I give the app a try. I download it on the App Store. And I sign up with my Gmail account. And I enter into Undertale Amino. And back then, a lot of y'all might know this. A lot of y'all might not know this, but back then, Amino used to have their own separate Aminos for the larger Aminos. So, when I went to go download Undertale Amino, I didn't download the whole Amino app. I only downloaded Undertale Amino. I didn't even know that there was a central Amino app at the time. I got the app, signed up, I made my account. I believe my first character that I roleplayed as was Asriel, because I thought Asriel was adorable. And I really wanted to be something that adorable. So, I roleplayed as Asriel, and sorry about that, I lost my train of thought. As I was roleplaying as Asriel, I'm sorry, let me step back here. My first impression of the Amino app was kind of, like, I don't really understand how to explain that. It was like a regular social media app, like Instagram and whatnot, but it was laid out a lot different than what I was used to for an app. That didn't bother me. It was a nice layout. I gotta be honest, Amino's got one of the best layouts in an app that I've ever seen in my entire life. I didn't know what to do, so my first thing was to go to the public chats. So I did that. I went to a public chat that was titled Undertale Roleplay. Now, when I was gonna join this chat, my first goal wasn't really to just immediately start role-playing, because I didn't know the way people did it on YouTube was the same way people do it here. So I entered and I waited. After about 2 minutes of watching everybody interact and set the scene, I chimed in. I believe what I did was that I just walked into town as Asriel, and I ran into a few characters. I can't remember too much since this was back in 2016, but from my memory, Wow, 2016. I was on Amino almost a decade ago. Oh my god. Damn, I feel old. Shit. So, in 2016, I was, in that chat, there were a lot of weird people. I'm just gonna say it like it is. There was a lot of weird people. That chat wasn't one of the best ones. Honestly, it almost turned me off to roleplaying. But there was this one girl there who was a little infatuated with me as Azrael. I'm not quite sure why, but we started in 15 minutes. We went through a couple rounds of dating type stuff, which led to me end up talking about marriage. I said something about marrying her. And this is when I first learned that you should not tell people that you want to marry them after first meeting them. Cause she was like, oh, wow, yeah, okay. So, no, never mind. I've got something I gotta go do. I'll be back. Bye. And then they left the chat. They didn't leave in the roleplay. They left the roleplay chat. That one hit me like a truck. I was like, okay, that sucks. That hurt. You could have just roleplayed that out, but sure, leave chat instead. So after that, I was like, all right, let's just dust myself off, go to another chat. And instead of going to another chat, actually I did go to a couple chats, but I don't remember them. So, but instead of going to another one, I ended up just making my own. Well, this is where things got interesting for me. When I entered this world, I started it off with me being Azrael. It's a simple undertale roleplay. The setting was set inside of Snowden. I didn't really know how to set a plot and enforce people to adhere to it. So for me, in my earlier years of role-playing, I was kind of a free bird, and I allowed other people to be a free bird as well. So we all joined in. A couple people joined in by walking into town. Some people portaled in from falling in the sky, which was a lot more common than I thought it was at the time. Oh! As I entered into Snowden, I walked past a beautiful frisk who was sitting on a bench alone by themselves. They weren't engaging with anyone, they were just looking down into the snow. I turned to them and I asked them, hey, what's wrong? And they told me nothing was wrong. I'm just new here. Just rolled into town and I don't really know much about the place. But this bench is nice. I admired the bench. I looked at it, looked at the wooden panels used as seating and back. Oh, I gotta blow my nose. Anyone else fascinated with how much sperm... God. Is anybody else fascinated with how eerily similar snot feels to cum? That, I don't know, that just feels really weird. Like when you're holding it in a napkin and you fold the napkin together and squish that around, that substance feels exactly the same. This bench would come to serve as a symbol later on in my life. As we kept going, I offered to take them to Grillby's, and they replied saying that sure, they'd love to go. They didn't know what it was, but they would love to go and find out. They haven't seen the town, and they want to see more of it, but they didn't know how to go about it yet. I said, alright, just follow me. They got off the bench, and they walked with me over to Grillby's. Now, as we entered Grillby's, we walked inside. The atmosphere was cozy. Warm, obviously, being owned by a fire person. And I bought us 2 drinks. Now, mind you, I'm a 15, 14-year-old role-playing, and I've never had enough alcohol before. I've had some, but not enough alcohol before to know what the fuck being drunk is. Or how much alcohol would get you drunk. So, I took a sip. And they took a sip. And we just talked for a while. Got to know each other, introduced our names. And then some commotion happened outside of Grillby's. via other role players. As we came outside, we were greeted with the unholy experience of another Azrael being in the world. And instead of being a normal Azrael, they were the hyper god of death. And they had came to seek dominion over us. And we're like, no, we're not gonna do that. Can you just chill out, bro? He's like, no, I'm not gonna chill out, bro. You bros, quote unquote, are going to bow to me as your new god. And we're like, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that, bro. That's not happening. Like, just stop. Stop harassing everyone. And he was like, fuck you. And he killed someone. I don't remember who it was, because they died. But he killed someone, another role player, immediately. And that guy was, you know how when you talk in parentheses to talk outside of the role playing? Yeah, so he was like, bro, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why did you do that? And I'm just like, at first, and it clicked to me that, like, the parentheses meant out of chat roleplay. I didn't know that at first, but, like, it clicked to me, like, the moment he was just, like, screaming about it. So, that was funny as hell to me. But then it also highlighted how serious the situation was. After that, me and Frisk, were in panic mode. We're like, okay, we gotta take this motherfucker down. So, I get my magic ready. I don't remember what I did as Azrael to get my magic. I think I just brought out his sword, and that was it. So we rush him. There's like 5 of us, by the way, against this guy. I just don't remember the other 3. And we were fighting him, and he was dodging and evading and writing out his movement. And the more of his movements that he was writing out and the less of mine that I was writing mine out, in my head, it made me feel like his attacks were doing more damage because he knew what his attacks were going to do to me. Like, if you'd say you shoot someone as opposed to you shoot a hole through somebody's left artery, then, left main artery, then you know that they're going to be bleeding out really fast pretty soon. As opposed to just shooting them, that means they could have got shot anywhere. And if you say shot at them, then that means they could even dodge it. Now, granted, some people would still say that they shot somebody in a specific place and write out a specific detail about the whole thing, but then if the other person counters it with another action, it doesn't matter anyways. However, in Amino, it kind of became, I wouldn't say common knowledge, but what's that word for whenever something is, like, communally accepted as, like, one's communally acceptable, right? Like, this is the way things are. This is how we said it. That word was basically that if you wrote out a description for an attack and that it was detailed or powerful, then the evade, defense, or counter to your attack must be equal in detail, which literally just meant text size. They didn't really care about detail, they more cared about text size, because you'd write like 5-6 lines of text, and then that person would just write dodge, and that's not fair. So, they had to be equivalent in detail and actually thought out. Like, you couldn't just say, oh, I spun around and the bullet missed me just by a hair. Like, that's, no. Unless they said something like they shot at you with, like, 15 bullets, then I guess you could say some bullshit like that. But the more detailed your attacker was, the more detailed your defense had to be. In my head, it was perceived that if your detailed was you were less as detailed in your actions, then your actions were less effective. Like magic. So, this was before that. So there was just a lot of fucking dodges and shit. And eventually in Amino, people just started putting in their chats that dodge was not an acceptable action anymore. Did not exist. If you said dodge, you were automatically hit. You were automatically hit. Except if you were Sans. Sans had this passive ability that you literally did not have to try hard. It was kind of crappy. It fit the character, but a lot of people oversaturated that concept and they really outplayed it to the fucking brim. But yeah. Yeah, so we defeat the Azrael through, I don't know, sheer perseverance, determination. And we banish him. He leaves. He leaves the world. He also ends up leaving the chat. No, not sure why he did that. But after that, we were all just celebrating and stuff. A couple other people also joined into the chat, like, after that situation. Because this is a public chat, they can join at any time. But the way Amino works is that you put a public chat down, it shows up at the top. Then when more people put public chats down, it pushes yours towards the bottom, and theirs keeps going up to the top. And you can scroll down the long list of public chats until you eventually reach yours. But, like, let's say 2 days go by, there's going to be, like, 200 some chats in your way. This Amino had, like, 32,000 people averagely in the daytime active, and it grew a year later. But yeah, so we all were celebrating. I was like, oh man, this is so freaking awesome. And we all just, went our own separate ways, continued playing the plots. And one of the fascinating things about group role plays that take place is that you, from the outside looking in, you might think that, like, if you're doing a group role play, you're gonna have to somehow fit like 12 people's storylines into like one story and give them time to react and respond to the same situation. That's not how it happens. Usually, instead of a group role play, what happens is that you have a bunch of people inside of a chat. There's about, let's say there's 25 people in the chat, right? They're gonna group up maybe like 5 people, sizes of like 3 to 5 people, right? All doing like their own little stories inside of the plot. And this even works inside of like plot-based role plays, right? Or like, let's say we have to go and like save the princess. What this breaks up to is basically the A story, the B story, the C story, and the whatever how many stories you need to have this many people inside of the fucking chat. And you kind of get this technique once you start doing it for a while. Hold on, guys, I gotta blow my nose. And you kind of just pick up that habit after you've been in a couple of chat role plays, and you realize that not everybody's story has to interact or mean anything to yours. But typically, they always end up connecting somehow. Usually what happens in a chat roleplay, in my experience, is that there's usually starts out with 20 people. They're all talking. 2 people start playing off some kind of love romance thing. 3 people start doing some randy, wacky-ass, zany story on the side. 5 to 7 people are actually doing the plot of the roleplay. And then, like, the rest are there and they're talking for a while, and then they kind of leave. And the whole thing ends up dwindling down to, like, even if you have the ABC stories, they all end up kind of dwindling down to, like, the A story eventually, because everybody weeds out, and then it's just, like, 8 people left in chat that stay. And we all just contribute to the story. And literally, no matter what you do contributes to the story, because there's so little of you guys. Everyone's able to just pick whatever you do and be like, okay, this is gonna affect me later. Alright guys, I gotta go to work real quick, so this is gonna be a broken up podcast episode. So far I seem to trail off a lot when it comes to conversation, and it's not really giving me the kind of not giving me the feel that I want for my podcast episodes, but this is a start. I usually don't do this kind of thing by myself, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I will, in the future, probably have a lot more episodes dealing with specific things, like, and I'm a gamer. It's gonna be a lot of gaming stuff, likely, and nerd shit like Amino, and other stuff that I care about. I mean, you obviously, if you don't fucking like it, dude, just leave the channel. But please stay if you do like it. Put something down in the comments. I like talking to people about this kind of shit. Amino was my fucking home, bro. It was my goddamn home, and they took it from me. Yeah, they being the fucking moderation team, abandoning us like my dad did. Crazy. Anyways, see you guys in the next part. You know what's crazy is that the whole time I was muted. I'm not quite sure why. Anyways, back to that story I was talking about. I'm gonna finish it up real quick. Actually, I don't remember where I left off. So, I'm just gonna say that that's roleplay that I started lasted 6 months. Like 6 actual months. We came back every single day, about between 5 to 10 of us. And once it got a little boring, we invited somebody else new in to shake up the story a bit. But it lasted 6 months, and one of the cool things about it lasting 6 months is that we got to do like holiday specials. So like around Halloween time, we decided to do we roleplayed a story within the same story that one of us had fucked up a spell that turned us all into Five Nights at Freddy's characters. So like I was Foxy, obviously. The Frisk that I met, their name is Diana. I still have the ability to talk to Diana nowadays, but I don't, cause I'm lame. No, it's just we have different things going on. You know, we don't roleplay with each other anymore ever since Amino fell. But we did like little holiday events, like we spent Thanksgiving together. I believe we all went to my character's house because I had an oversized mansion. Because who the hell doesn't have an oversized mansion inside of a roleplay? Though I wouldn't really call it a mansion. It was more like a cabin, like if you think Sans in Papyrus's house, but like triple the size with like extra rooms and shit. So we all had dinner at my house. When my music stopped playing, we all had dinner at my house for Thanksgiving and just spent the time together. Then Christmas came around as well, and I think that's when the roleplay died, was after Christmas. We were like, we should start a new chat, get some new people in here, start a new story. So we did that, and I can't for the life of me remember what the new story was. I believe what we did was something to do with college. Something to do with college. This was before Amino started banning those kind of roleplays. We moved it to a college roleplay to freshen up the story, put us into a new light. I remember in the last roleplay, the one I was just talking about, I had a couple of adopted kids, and I ended up trying to kill one of the adopted kids because they tried to marry each other, and my character did not take that lightly. And after the murder attempt, they still talked to me, but they didn't trust me anymore. I was like their estranged father now, which made sense. I tried to murder them. God, that's a really weird thing to say out loud. Like, I think one of the coolest things about roleplays is that you get to say these kind of stories that you don't really get anywhere else. Like, I don't see that kind of storyline be played out anywhere other than fan fictions. And I guess that's what roleplay really is. It's just like one large fan fiction, an interactive fan fiction. To me, when I was roleplaying in Amino, the chats felt like timelines. So if you were in one chat roleplay, you were in a timeline. If you went to another chat roleplay, then that was a separate timeline. So depending on your character, like if you have fourth wall breaking characters, like a certain Sans or some like error Sans, then going to a different chat would just be entering a different timeline. And you could remember all the memories from a different chat roleplay. I ended up playing a story shift Kara after I stopped playing as Azriel because I don't know what happened. I think in my roleplay I said it that like Azriel was tired and he needed to go and do some stuff. So he had a friend who was gonna take over and watch over the place for him, which was Kara, story shift Kara, which I was just called Shift because whenever there was an actual Kara around, it got confusing. So I was referred to as Shift. My time as Shift was a really, bizarre but oddly missable time of my life. I was a maniac. Shift was a fucking maniac. He was not a good guy. I mean, like, he wasn't trying to fool anybody that he was a good guy, but he did things that made them love him. He protected them, cared about them, but his care is sick. He's a sick person. And as I kept going through different role plays, I kept having encounters, fights, triumphs, victories, all that kind of shit. And it got to a point where my character was growing on a multi-dimensional level. Because at first I wasn't able to see the other timelines. Like if I went to another timeline, my memory was, just kaput. But I had ended up killing like 2 or 3 different people and took their souls, which gave me more power as a character. So I became a boss monster, which allowed me to transverse timelines and remember them. So every time I went to a new timeline, I would fall through a portal rather than just spawning in the world as I was actually there, because I wasn't actually part of the world. I entered it from another timeline. So my character got this gimmick where he could just transverse timelines and he could remember other timelines. And then it got to a point where I was in multiple timelines at the same time. So if something happened in one timeline, it would affect what happened to me in that roleplay. I mean, in another roleplay. And I'd have to work that in. So my character ended up having a kid in one roleplay, and that kid stayed as canon to my character. His name was Rift. We named him Rift because I was Story Shift Kara, and the mother was a Rosetail Kara, so we named him Rift to combine our names, Rose and Shift, Rift. And Rift became this fourth dimensional omnipotent being eventually, because of me and the soul power that I had, and mixing it with, another Kara, had allowed them to grow exponentially in their power and age. So within I think 4 months of the roleplay, Rift had gone from being a baby, because we had gone through actually birthing him into the hospital. Funny thing about that, when he was born, his mother started singing to him "Tearing My Heart," and she started with the lyrics about driving in a car and cursing the government, and I didn't get it. So I was just like, "Rose, stop the car," out of nowhere, and she just looked at me like I was crazy, and I looked at her like I was crazy, because I was like, "Why are we in a car all of a sudden?" I'm confused, and she's just like, "Okay, whatever." And I'm like, "All right." It was like an AI moment, bro. Oh, an AI moment. God, I was a bad role player at first. I also didn't know that 21 Pilots song. I eventually ended up finding out about that 21 Pilots song because I listened to it the day I got dumped on Halloween, and that's when I finally understood what the hell was happening back then. So, Rift is Rift is one of my more special characters. I think I might enjoy his creation more than Shift, because Shift isn't an OC of mine. Shift is just an altered character of an actual universe. Story Shift is an AAU that's created by another person. So I don't know what you call that when you take a created character and you just change the lens of them through your own actions. Um, I don't know. I guess an alternate. Yeah, it's an alternate character. So the more abilities I gained, the more powerful my character became, and I would add to the story of this on my profile wall in Amino. And some people argued me on the legitimacy of my character, and I had to explain to them that my character isn't actually Story Shift Kara. It's a version of Story Shift Kara that has been going through multiple role plays, and the role plays have affected their life to where now this is who they are and this is what they're capable of. It's not actually Story Shift Kara, but a different version of Kara. For the most part, I didn't really get much pushback on it, especially when I explained the situation. And I wasn't one of those people who made the character overpowered. My characters were definitely killable. 3 of my characters are dead to this day. Right now, Carly is one of my characters. They died actually by my character Shift. I killed them because what we were role playing was that Diana was in love with Carly, and they were living together. And one day, he had left. He's been gone for years. And then he had came back, and he was hella evil when he came back. And he knew where Diana was. He could feel her because they had a connection together. Back when they first met in that first role play, him and Diana weren't ever together, but they had a lot of special moments. There was one point where we went to a river in Snowden, and the river was frozen, but it was free flowing, and it also was glowing a little bit, it was luminescent. And by the river, there still sits Shift's original knife with a sticky note attached to it. I don't think it was a literal sticky note, but there's a note attached to it that says everything stays. Because right there is where Diana sang to Shift, "Everything Stays" from Adventure Time. It's one of the more beautiful moments of Shift's life where he grounds himself to realizing that even though everything's going to change, everything changes all the time. It always kind of stays where it is. Like, you can always go back and find it. That's the whole point of it, is that you can always go back and find where you came from. The knife's always there as a symbol of that. So every once in a while he'll go back, and every once in a while actually, I'll think about that frozen river. And I'll think about the moment Diana is saying to me. And mind you, like, obviously this was all in text. Like, this wasn't something that actually was saying to me, but in the moment I remember visualizing all of that, me sitting by the river and her singing to me. And I remember staring at this echo flower that didn't echo. It didn't echo back to you, and it wasn't supposed to be in Snowden. It doesn't survive in that climate, but it was there, kind of frozen on the other side of the river from the knife. And it's probably still there across the river from the knife. At least that's how I like to think about it. I don't know. I mean, it's a weird feeling to hold that kind of moment so dear to myself. And I don't know why, but for some reason, it means a lot to me that that knife is still there. And I know that nothing can literally move the knife because it's all in my imagination, but something makes my heart feel better thinking that the knife is still there, waiting for me to go and pick it up. You know, speaking of timelines, I'd say that when it comes to Amino, the different chats are different timelines, and the different Aminos are different universes. So, like, if you were to be an Undertale Amino and then go over to the Undertale AU Amino, you're not hopping timelines, you're hopping universes, which wasn't something that Shift could do. So he can't do that. However, his son, Rift, can do that. Rift's gone to different Aminos before, and he's kind of detached himself from the Undertale Amino. He understands what the Undertale Amino is. He understands what Amino is, and it took him a while to figure it out and how the concept worked, but then he realized that he's in a chat app. He knows he's in a chat app. He knows that everything that he can do is going to be confined to this chat app. And whenever you would roleplay and, you do the parentheses to speak outside of chat, I would fourth wall break because I would talk as myself, right? Like outside of chat and be like, yeah, no, let's do this with the story. And then I'd also send a text as if being, no, don't change the story. And like everybody be like, wait, what's going on here? I'm like, oh, my character can see what we're talking about. And then I would also say, hey, don't call me a character. We talked about this. You can call me by my name. And I would literally play the hell out of the fourth wall breaking bit with Rift. It was one of my most favorite bits to do, but he was one of my least used characters because that bit doesn't fit into a lot of plots and it gets you kicked out of a lot of chats if you try to force it. So I would establish that he can see outside roleplay chat and that people should refrain from giving information about the world if they don't want him to know about it. But irregardless, he most likely knows about it anyways. He just likes to play into the scenarios because he understands that's how his world works. He's not going to keep breaking his world, otherwise the world will reject him. In a literal sense, that means that the moderators of that timeline would actually kick him out of the timeline. So he knew that there was rules he had to play by to keep progressing his own story. And I like to roleplay the hell out of that too. I really did, because that was fun. I think it's something interesting about the creativity that you can use to betray yourself inside of roleplay. And you gotta be honest, guys. Like, that's one hell of a way to fucking do it with a fourth wall break. And he was like Deadpool, but not as funny. But definitely as fucking cool. He also downplayed his strength a lot. Because if he didn't, he was multiversal. If he didn't fucking downplay the strength, there wouldn't be a story. Like I said, I wasn't the kind of person who roleplayed stories where I could just do whatever the hell I want, irregardless of plot. So if there was a plot where it didn't make a lot of sense for him to be my main character in it, I usually used him, like, whenever, like, a month went by within us roleplaying, he would come in to, like, shake things up every once in a while, or just to be added in because, adding an omnipotent being does shake the story up a little bit. I remember one time I was in another roleplay where Shift had another son, and I had to bring the person from that roleplay into the original chat roleplay where he had Rift, so he could discuss about the fact that he lost a kid years ago. And Rift helped him find his son, or I guess his lost half-brother, and saved him. I can't remember the name of the other son. Oh, it was Jax. His name was Jax. He was normal. He didn't have any omnipotent powers. Shift only had one omnipotent kid. He had multiple kids, but he had only one omnipotent one. He doesn't really know what happened there. What created him. Rift is a lot more stronger than Shift is, and he doesn't have to level up to get that strength. Whereas Shift, the reason he's as strong as he is because he's killed other people, and he even has a pocket dimension with jars of souls just sitting in his like pocket dimension backpack type shit, waiting to use them if he ever does. Shift's accurate level is 999,999,999, and counting. It's really hard to break that billion. But I haven't roleplayed a Shift for a while, and I don't think I ever will, given that Shift again is not a good person, and I don't want to like roleplay that person anymore. Okay, let's move on to the next. Let's move on to the next subject. One of the things I will say was kind of hard about roleplaying was the fact that in Amino, not everybody was in the same time zone. So there was a lot of roleplays where you had to wait until like 9 p.m. to roleplay. And we would do that, where we would actually wait for the majority of us to come back before we would start progressing the story. Though, from my memories, the way we handled them being gone for long periods of time, whenever we were all roleplaying, we were in like a really good, juicy part of the plot, was that their character would either make their character go to sleep, and they'd be asleep for a while, or we would write it off as them being in some kind of coma, or whatever organic material we came up with at the time. In some rare instances, somebody would trust the actions of their character to another role player and allow them to control their character, so we'd be able to progress. And other times, we usually, if someone left and they had to go, we would actually just like pause the role play and not roleplay it, since, you know, we needed them and we needed their actions to progress the story. Like, they were the main plot pusher. You remember like how I said like a lot of people had A plots, B plots, and C plots going on with the overall story of the roleplay? That was very helpful in times like that, whenever time zones were an issue. We kind of just deviated mainly towards the B, C, or A story, or we create a D story until they got back, and then we would organically try to shift it back to the overall A story and keep going. And we ran into the problem a lot, actually. I mean, like, 9 times out of 10, I hardly ever had somebody who was in the same country as me, let alone the same time zone. I knew a lot of people from, like, the Netherlands, Japan. Diana herself was from the Philippines. The Philippines? Is that how you say it? Yeah, the Philippines. I was in Texas at the time, and people from Florida, California, Oregon, Washington. It was all wild. I mean, like, it was nice to talk to those people. I didn't ask them much about their own cultures, because we primarily were there for role-playing. I asked Diana a lot about her pastimes and stuff, and like what she did over there, but I don't remember most of the conversations we talked about. I just remember her mainly talking about this one card game called Vanguard. It was Vanguard something, but I do not remember the name. I just remember her being heavily into it. Diana was probably one of my longest standing friends in Amino. Definitely one of my longest standing friends, actually. She was one of the first people I met when I joined Amino, and years went on and we still roleplayed with each other. Like, I made some Aminos and I invited her as like one of the first few people to join those Aminos. I remember I made my own Amino. I made the Gamaboo Amino, which was supposed to be Amino for gamers and anime lovers. It was a great name. The name Gamaboo, I think, was by itself awesome, but the management was not good. Let's put it this way. our leader was a manipulative, egotistical, narcissistic attention whore. And my other leader, like, she was the agent of the Amino. And I was the other leader, with the second leader being this guy I know as Kane, which Kane is he's a very special person in my heart. So me and Kane did not get along. What drove a wedge between me and Kane was Leslie. And I'm using fake names here because I don't want to, give them out. But Les, we'll call her Les, because I don't want to say Leslie though. It's fucking 2 syllables. Les drove a wedge between us because she had a lot of mental issues. I don't even really know if she had mental issues. What I do know is that she had attention-seeking problems. She needed the spotlight to be about her. If it wasn't, she lashed out and she internalized everybody else not paying attention to her as them damning her and treating her like she was a villain. So I took it upon myself to try to be her hero and try to help and save her from herself and from all the bullies who kept attacking her. But I was blind. I couldn't see that she was ruining my relationships with people. And the real kicker about that was the fact that every single female I knew hated her. Like, they hated her, dude. And I really thought it was because, like, she just took my attention is why they all hated her. Because I'm not gonna lie, I kind of was seeked out a bit too much by people, especially the female groups. But that's my fault. I was a flirt. I was a flirt not because I wanted to have the attention of females, but mainly because Undertale taught me that flirting can make me friends. And I didn't realize the double-edged sword in that getting friends through flirtation isn't the kind of friendship that you really want to have. The reason me and Kane hated each other is because he was her friend before I was. And realistically, Kane was just me in the future, and I didn't realize that. He had been with Les for months. He had seen the patterns, he had seen how her effect on him and his other relationships, and he was tired of entertaining her childish whims. So every time she'd have a lash out, he would try to be the adult and tell her that she's being crazy. But his way of going about it was very crass to me at the time. And looking back on it, I feel so bad about the things I said to Kane in response to how he treated Les. But Kane was right. Kane was right that she was manipulating us, and I didn't want to see it. I wanted to see that she was a good person, and I wanted to see that I was a even better person for trying to help her see how much of a good person she was, but that wasn't the truth. I don't really know to this day what drove me to keep believing her and drove me to keep defending her. I guess some part of me saw it as like everyone else is just needlessly being mean to her without any actual... what's the word? Evidence. I guess evidence. I mean, the evidence was there, I just ignored it. So, whenever there was a leader problem happening at Amino, me and him would butt heads a lot. And typically, it's not because of Les, actually. On another note, was that Kane was a bit of a corrupt leader. He played favorites. There was a lot of nepotism going on. Whenever one of his friends had an issue, he didn't even look at the full situation. He kind of just took their side and told the other person that they need to shut up and calm down. And I was like, no, they don't need to shut up and calm down. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. You can't just treat one of our members a certain way and say fuck you to the other members. That's not how a fair leadership works. We're running an Amino here. We're gonna have all kinds of people, and we're hoping to have 1,000 to maybe even, if we possibly can, tens of thousands of people in this Amino. If you're going to hold a hierarchy above everyone else, no one's gonna want to be here. And they're always gonna feel like second-rate citizens, and no one wants to be that coming into a new place with only like 100 people in it. So I was trying to see it more for the growth, and he was trying to just see it for more of like, this is a hangout area for his friends. And I didn't stand with that. I didn't stand with that crap. Funnily enough, though, we never showed our aggression to each other outside of our leader chats. So whenever we were in public chats doing public roleplays, me and Kane actually entertained this idea this idea that we were lovers that didn't want to admit that they loved each other. Okay, wait, hold on. I just realized lovers has a different connotation. We didn't have sex. We danced around that. We danced around the idea of that, but we never did. We never had a single roleplay like that. But every time we had a roleplay, it was kind of like we were, you know, like those two people who like hate each other to where their hate's coming off kind of like flirtatious. And it's like to everyone else, it's like, man, those guys just really need to fucking get it over with. But to us, we're just like, we fucking hate each other. Like, everyone's seeing it as like, oh man, they're definitely fucking behind the scenes. And we're like, no, we fucking hate each other. What even made it worse was that Les themselves was feeding into this. They made a lemon fanfic about us. A lemony fanfic about us. And posted it. Semi-lemony, because Amino didn't let that stuff slide. So it was a semi-lemony fan fiction that they just posted about us. And, like, everyone read. And it drove the narrative even further. It drove the narrative even further. I ain't gonna lie. I also played it, so it was fun. I'm like, I hated the guy at the time, but like it was fun to fool everybody about that. I like playing that devil's advocate type bullshit. I know that's how DA means at this specific instance, but it was, I don't know. It's fun playing two sides of a story. Speaking of people that I knew, inside of Amino, one of the things that always fascinated me in the Amino, instead of all of Amino, not just Undertale, was there was this phenomenon where I kept running into the same people from like one Amino, but in a different one, without actually like, you know, knowing they were there. There was this one guy I knew, his name was Derek. Oh god, Derek is a special character. Holy shit. So one day I met Derek inside of Undertale and Amino. I ended up finding these group of people by accident through a public chat roleplay. And then we moved it to a group chat roleplay where, well, we were able to get a bit more fluid with what we wanted to add into the roleplay. So here there was these people called, we're gonna give them some names, okay? So there was Stacy, Jonathan, Derek, and me were the main four people. There's other people inside the roleplay, but they ended up deviating and they never joined back. So me and Stacy ended up dating. We still ended up dating IRL, but that's not really the point. And the roleplay we ended up dating, right? So that's where, why the hell did I mention that? I don't think that has anything to do with what I'm about to segue into. Anyways, so Derek was part of that roleplay, and we roleplayed in there for, I think that roleplay lasted around 3 months. But I ended up making my own roleplay, and Derek joined it. This was a roleplay. Okay, in Undertale Amino, there was this concept that people teetered with called sin. And sin basically just replaced the word for like sex or sexual stuff. So whenever you sinned in Undertale Amino, you engaged in erotic roleplay. I basically made an Amino that was primarily just for sin. It was a sin Amino. And I ended up getting like 350 members. Apparently a lot of people wanted to sin, but like they didn't want to get caught in Undertale. So there was a high market for it. And I attracted a lot of people towards the cinema. There was a lot of hentai artists and really, really good role players, despite what they wanted to roleplay about. Every chat in that Amino was basically just a sin chat, and I mean there was plot. Don't get me wrong, there was plot, but they weren't afraid to take it to the deep end. But I will be honest now, group chats for sin ended up in sin orgies. And usually that left somebody feeling out of place because, you know, one person got more attention than others, but typically people were really chill about it. If they didn't have a roleplay that fit, if they weren't fitting in the roleplay, they either just made a new chat for themselves, or they DM someone. It was fine. The whole roleplay, I mean, the whole Amino was absolutely fine. But Derek joined this Amino, and he was in there for a while until I ended up hearing about another secret Amino where I joined that one, and I found that person through my Amino, and I was in there, and it took me about a month in that Amino before I ended up running into Derek in the Amino, and realizing the person I was talking to was Derek. He was like, "Wait, Shift?" And I was like, "Yeah, who's this?" He's like, "It's Derek," and I'm like, "Derek, what are you doing here?" He was like, "What am I doing here? I've been here for like 2 months. What are you doing here?" I was like, "I just got here a month ago." It was like, whoa, I didn't think he'd make it into insert secret Amino name, because the Amino had a coded name so nobody could find it through search by accident, and it was also locked. Amino had that feature, by the way, where you could lock the Aminos and you'd have to submit a request to join, and then the leaders would have to accept that request. So, needless to say, the only way you could get to this Amino was if you were invited by somebody from the Amino, and then after you got that invite, somebody approved you to come in. So it was really hard to get into the Amino. They didn't want it to get shut down. Aminos could get shut down just for being purely about sin. It was basically like making speakeasies. You only knew about the speakeasies from somebody who told you about the speakeasy. And then there were a couple other Aminos that I went into that were non-sin that I still ended up running into Derek in. And there was this one guy, who I knew as Yeko. I met him inside of my Amino, the one that I made. I stole his girlfriend. He did not like me. I stole his girlfriend. And then, we fast forward to when I met, like, Stacy and them. And there was this guy named Cross. And he was one of the people who ended up like deviating from the roleplay a month in, to where we left just the 4 of us. Yeko was also Derek's friend, which I found out later, because Cross was Derek's friend. Cross never knew, Derek never knew Yeko from my Amino, but he knew Cross in the Undertale Amino. Cross ended up, I don't know how we found this out, but I had said something Sunny, and he was like, "Oh, Sunny, yeah, I knew it was Sunny back in insert my Amino," and I was like, "That's crazy, I owned that Amino," and he was like, "Oh, really?" He was like, "Who were you?" And then I said my name, and he was like, "You motherfucker, you stole my girlfriend," and I'm like, "Yeko?" He was like, "Yeah, it's fucking Yeko," and then he ended up leaving the chat. He ended up leaving the chat. I didn't care though. That guy was a dick. That guy was a literal dick. His girlfriend thought so too. Alright, this is the end of the episode. I'm sorry that this video didn't outline anything specifically that you guys wanted to talk about in Amino. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and talk about Amino's moderation team for the 18th time. Literally go read a book about it. Like, there's gotta be a book published about how crappy Amino's moderation team was, man. That shit should go down in history. Because Amino could have been the best social media app. Like, the best social media app. But the moderation team failed us. So, oh, it just fell. So that concludes today's episode. So tell me, how did Amino affect your guys' lives, you know? Share in the comments below a roleplay memory that if you could, you would relive it. And if you would relive it, you know, what would you do differently? Would you play the same story out just to rewatch that story unfold live again? Or would you make different decisions knowing what the effects of your roleplay led to later on in the roleplay? Or later on in your life? And if you guys have any suggestions for anything else that I should talk about or share my thoughts on, let me know in the comments. This is Sondiction, out.